Good afternoon, good morning, dear participants. Welcome to this webinar on the outcome of the 21st meetings of the Chemical Review Committee and the POPs Review Committee. My name is Andrea Lechner. I'm a program officer in the BRS Secretariat, working on the CRC meetings. I will be presenting you the outcomes of the Chemical Review Committee meeting, and then my colleague Sharon Rivera will talk about the POPs Review Committee meeting. And at the end, there will be time for any questions and answers or discussion. I hope you are well settled in. We're just starting our webinars in this new Zoom platform, new for us for our webinars. So I hope you can hear and see us well. All right, so the 21st meeting of the Chemical Review Committee took place from 23rd to 26th of September in Rome. It was chaired by Ms. Nolosuku Gawai from South Africa, and we had a total of 90 participants, including 26 members and 64 observers. The main outcome of the meeting is a recommendation to the Conference of the Parties to list methylparathion in Annex 3 to the Rotterdam Convention as a pesticide. And the committee also reviewed in total 33 notifications of final regulatory action on 18 chemicals and 3 severely hazardous pesticide formulations. As a little bit of background, the Chemical Review Committee is the subsidiary body under the Rotterdam Convention, which is entrusted with the process of adding new chemicals to the Rotterdam Convention, to its Annex 3. And there are two main tracks. The one are the notifications of final regulatory action. That is when a party takes a final regulatory action to severely restrict or prohibit a chemical. It needs to notify the Rotterdam Convention Secretariat. And once there are two notifications from two different regions called the prior informed consent regions, then these are put in front of the Chemical Review Committee for reviewing against specific criteria. And the second track are the severely hazardous pesticide formulations. Proposals for including such formulations under the convention can be made by developing countries and countries with economies in transition. So you find here also the link to the website where all the information about the meeting is contained, and the meeting reports and decisions adopted will be uploaded here. So let's start with the main outcome, which is the listing of a pesticide, namely methylparathion, in Annex 3 to the Rotterdam Convention. So this chemical was notified as being used as an insecticide and acaricide in agriculture. And notification was found to meet the criteria, which is set out in Annex 2 to the Convention already at the first meeting of the CRC, notification from the European Union. And now at CRC 21, a second notification from Brazil was found to meet the same criteria. And that thus triggered the committee to recommend listing in Annex 3. This is, however, only the first step under the Chemical Review Committee. The committee is now drafting a draft decision guidance document. And only once that document is completed, the whole package would be sent to the next meeting of the Conference of the Parties. The draft DGD, as we say, draft decision guidance document, would be then made available to parties if the chemical was listed in Annex 3 to the Convention, in order to help them to take a decision on whether they wish to continue importing of this chemical. So the DGD could be expected to be finalized at the next CRC meeting, and then the following COP in 2027 could consider this recommendation. You might wish to note that methylparathion is already actually included in Annex 3 to the Rotterdam Convention, but with a more specific and limited scope, because it's currently listed as a severely hazardous pesticide formulation. You can see it's listed as emulsifiable concentrate at or above 19.5% active ingredient, and thus at or above 1.5% active ingredient. If the work by the committee was completed, and if the Conference of the Parties agreed to its listing, the entry for the severely hazardous pesticide formulation would be replaced with the pesticide entry as that is more broad in scope. Then we turn to a number of notifications where the number of chemicals where there were a variety of notifications for review by the committee. And in each of them, only one of them from one PIC region was found to meet the criteria. So it's not, these chemicals are not yet going ahead to a listing recommendation, but this one notification is waiting for a second from another PIC region in order to proceed. So the first of these is chlorothalonil, a pesticide that was used by the notifying parties on fruits, vegetables, coffee, and flour. It was prohibited in the EU due to human health and environmental concerns, and the notification from the European Union was found to meet the criteria. Then we have diazinon, also a pesticide used by the notifying party as a organophosphate pesticide, insecticide, acaricide, and nematicide. Here also only a notification from the European Union was found to meet criteria, and it's thus currently waiting for another notification to come forward. Moving on then to dichlorvos, a pesticide. Here also we had a notification from the European Union found to meet the criteria, but no second one. And actually a notification from the EU was already considered at the previous CRC meeting, but the committee couldn't yet reach a conclusion. But then in the intersessional period, the European Union submitted a new notification, and that one was now found to meet the criteria. Then we have phenamifos, a pesticide, once again, and here there was a notification from the European Union found to meet the criteria, and the consideration of a second notification from Mozambique was not yet completed, and it is to continue at the next CRC meeting. Moving on to methiocarb, an insecticide used, for example, on maize, potato, groundnut, and citrus. It was prohibited in the European Union due to human health and environmental concerns. The notification from the European Union was found to meet the criteria, but not the other notification, so currently not moving forward. And then there is also metomyl, a pesticide, where notification from Chile was found to meet the criteria, but also still waiting for a second notification from another PIC region to move forward. Next, then you have a list of chemicals for which no notification was found to meet the criteria. So consideration of these chemicals and notifications has been completed by the CRC for now until future notifications come forward. These contain a range of notifications from Mozambique that were considered over a couple of years by the committee, that the committee was now able to reach agreement on: clovenvinfos, ethion, methylathion, and thiodicarb. And then also some new notifications related to fipronil and dicophol that have come forward. So all of these are pesticides, but all of these not moving forward at the current stage. And then for one of the notifications from Mozambique on cabaril, the discussions by the committee will continue at the next meeting. Originally, it seemed like the committee might be moving forward with that cabaril notification, and the draft rationale was already prepared by the committee, but then in the end it was not adopted as there was no consensus among the members. And the rationale, as far as it had been prepared, will be annexed to the meeting report so that it's available for future CRC meetings. And then there were also 4 notifications from Malaysia for 4 different pesticides: profenophos, pentoed, proteophos, and quinalphos. They were discussed, however, due to time constraints, not in a lot of detail, and the committee wasn't yet able to reach agreement on those, so they will be continued to be discussed at the next CRC meeting. Moving on then to the severely hazardous pesticide formulation proposals. 3 concrete proposals submitted by the Laos People's Democratic Republic. had been submitted already for the previous CRC meeting, but the committee could not yet reach agreement. In the case of the severely hazardous pesticide formulations, the relevant criteria in the convention are set out in part 3 of Annex 4. But at this meeting, the committee actually did manage to reach an agreement on them, and the conclusion was that they all do not meet these criteria, so their consideration has also been completed. You can see here the chemicals on the screen. And this conclusion was reached because the committee did some work in the intersessional period to help it reach agreement more easily on the consideration of SHPF proposals. Concretely, an intersessional task group had been set up that had prepared a number of products for the CRC 21 meeting. Firstly, it prepared a revised collections of examples of severely hazardous pesticide formulation proposals. So that collection is part of the CRC handbook, and the intention is to help the committee see how it has evaluated such proposals over time and what were the criteria, what were the elements that helped it evaluate the proposals against the criteria. This updated collection of examples was noted by the CRC, and it requested the Secretariat to include it in the CRC handbook. So actually, we're just completing that work. So in the next 1 or 2 days on the website, you will see the updated version of the CRC handbook with that collection of examples. And secondly, in the intersessional period leading up to CRC 21, an intersessional task group also worked on updating 2 forms. And these are actually the forms that are made available to parties for making SHPF proposals. One is intended for parties that experience human health incidents and the other for environmental incidents. And these 2 forms were updated and then also discussed in quite a bit of detail at the committee's 21st meeting. But the committee didn't yet complete the work on those 2. So there have been revisions to these information documents issued in 41 Rev 1 and in 42 Rev 1. And these contain the work as far as the committee got. But the work of the intersessional task group actually was continued, so that in the intersessional period, the work on the forms continues, and then hopefully it is completed at the next CRC meeting. And then finally, some other matters. As tasked by the last meeting of the Conference of the Parties, the CRC identified an interim chair for CRC 22, and an election of the chair will be considered at the next COP. And the new interim chair is Mr. Stephen Sangster from Belize, and he will be taking up office at the 1st of May 2026. CRC also took note of the updated indicative list of substances covered by the listing of PFOA, salts, and PFOA-related compounds. So this chemical is listed in Annex 3 to the convention, and there's a request from the Conference of the Parties to the Secretariat to keep an updated list of the substances covered by the listing, and it is provided every year to CRC in case they have any input to the list. And it's worked on in collaboration with the list under the Stockholm Convention, where PFOA, salts, and PFOA-related compounds are also listed in Annex A. There were dates announced for CRC 22. However, we can already tell you that these dates will not stay. They need to be modified, and we're currently consulting the Bureau on the revision of those dates, and then we will inform everybody about the new dates. And finally, we expect the English version of the meeting report to come out in a few weeks' time, hopefully within the months of November, and then language versions in early next year. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will now hand over to my colleague Sharon, who will present to you the COPS Review Committee, and then there's time for questions and answers at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Let me just share my slides. Okay. Could you confirm, Andrea, that?
All good.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sharon Rivera. I'm a program officer in the BRS Secretariat, and I will be presenting to you the outcomes of the 21st meeting of the Persistent Organic Pollutants Review Committee. The meetings of, let me just, is the tab above visible? Because I'm just concerned it's covering part of the slides.
No, we see the full slide. It
The
seems
full slide?
fine.
Okay, sorry. Okay, it's just on my screen there. Okay, so the 21st meeting of PopRock took place back-to-back with the CRC meetings on 29 September to 3 October 2025 in Rome, in the FAO headquarters. It was chaired by Mr. Peter Dawson, the member from New Zealand, and we had a total of 143 participants in attendance, including 30 members, with 1 member unable to attend, and 113 observers. All in all, PopRock 21 adopted 7 decisions, and most importantly, it included a deferral of the decision on the draft risk profile for PBDDFs and PBCDDFs, which we will elaborate on in a bit. PopRock 21 also established 5 intersessional working groups. Okay, so on item 5A, which is the agenda item on consideration of the draft risk profile for polybrominated dibenzopidioxins and dibenzofurans and mixed polybrominated chlorinated dibenzopidioxins and dibenzofurans. So in considering this item, the committee had before it the draft risk profile, additional information relating to the draft risk profile, and comments and responses relating thereon. So by way of background, this was a proposal from Switzerland on the listing in Annex C to the convention of these chemicals, and in 2024, by decision PopRock 20/4, the committee at its 20th meeting decided that the screening criteria set out in Annex D had been fulfilled for PBDDFs and PBCDDFs, and established an intersessional working group to further review the proposal and prepare a draft risk profile in line with Annex E to the convention. So at the 21st meeting, a contact group was established to consider this item, further revise the draft risk profile, and prepare a draft decision based on the initial text prepared by the Secretariat. And of course, taking into account the discussions in plenary and also in the contact group. So at the conclusion of the meeting, the committee adopted decision 1, by which it decided to defer its decision on the draft risk profile for PBDDFs and PBCDDFs to its 22nd meeting taking place next year. The committee noted that the committee was unable to agree that the information on the linkage between long-range environmental transport and adverse effects on human health was sufficient to reach a conclusion on the draft risk profile. The committee established an intersessional working group to review and update the draft risk profile, with particular attention to information on the linkages between long-range environmental transport and its adverse effects on human health. And finally, it invited parties and observers to submit by 5 December 2025 the information specified in Annex E, in particular, information relevant to the linkages between long-range environmental transport and adverse effects of these chemicals on human health. So the committee also updated the draft risk profile, and it will be issued shortly on the meeting website as information document 17. The next decision pertains to agenda item 5B on the evaluation of the continued need for perfluorooctane sulfonic acid, its salts, and perfluorooctane sulfonyl fluoride for the various acceptable purposes and specific exemptions pursuant to paragraphs 5 and 6 of Part 3 of Annex B to the Convention. So by way of background, in accordance with paragraph 5 of Part 3 of Annex B to the Convention, the COP is required to evaluate the continued need for PFOS, its salts, and PFOS-SF for the acceptable purposes and specific exemptions listed in Annex B on the basis of available scientific, technical, environmental, and economic information. Paragraph 6 of Part 3 of Annex B also specifies that such evaluation is supposed to take place every 4 years in conjunction with a regular meeting of the COP. So since the listing of PFOS in Annex B to the Convention in 2009, with several acceptable purposes and specific exemptions, the COP had actually to date conducted 3 such evaluations. So the evaluation started in 2015, and then the second one in 2019, and the third one in 2023. And the next evaluation by the COP is supposed to take place in 2027. At the 2019 COP, taking into account the recommendation by POPROC, the listing of PFOS in Annex B was further amended to reduce the number of acceptable purposes and specific exemptions. At the 2023 COP meeting, the outcome of the third evaluation had been decision SC11/4, in which the COP took note of the reports and recommendations of POPROC and decided to conduct the 4th evaluation at its 13th meeting. So at the 22nd meeting of POPROC, which is to take place next year, the committee is expected to finalize its assessment of alternatives to PFOS and PFOS-SF, including recommendations for consideration by the Conference of the Parties at its 13th meeting, taking place in 2027, and to provide comments on the draft evaluation report to be prepared by the Secretariat. And so to set the stage for this assessment, the committee adopted decision 21/2, in which it agreed to the terms of reference for conducting the evaluation of the continued need for PFOS, its salts, and PFOS-SF for the various acceptable purposes and specific exemptions pursuant to paragraphs 5 and 6 of Part 3 of Annex B. It also decided to establish an intersessional working group to conduct the related activities, and invited parties and observers to provide to the Secretariat by 5 December 2025 information on PFOS, its salts, and PFOS-SF. You will find on the website information document 7 Rev 1, which contains the terms of reference for this evaluation. So on this slide, you will just see some background information on progress and efforts at eliminating PFOS. So on the left-hand side of your screen, you will see that there is only one remaining acceptable purpose for PFOS, and this is for insect baits with sulfluramide as an active ingredient for the control of leaf-cutting ants. And then 2 specific exemptions on the right hand side for hard metal plating, and secondly for firefighting foams. For most parties to the Stockholm Convention, these 2 specific exemptions are set to expire on the 3rd of December of this year. You will recall at the 12th meeting of the COP held in May, there was a request submitted by the Republic of Korea to extend the specific exemption for firefighting foam for another 4 years until 2023. And this was agreed on by the Conference of the Parties. So as you can see, discussions on this issue had already started at COP12. Next, on agenda item 5C, which is on the review of the specific exemption for the use of perfluorooctyl iodide for the production of perfluorooctyl bromide for the purpose of producing pharmaceutical products pursuant to paragraph 3 of Part 10 of Annex A to the Convention. So PFOI is actually a PFOA-related compound, and therefore it is listed with specific exceptions. So this evaluation will be the first one to be conducted. As per paragraph 3 of Part 10 of Annex A, this evaluation is expected to take place every 4 years. So in this regard, the committee adopted decision POPROC 21/3, by which it agreed on the terms of reference for conducting the review of the continued need for the specific exemption for the use of perfluorooctyl iodide for the production of perfluorooctyl bromide for the purpose of producing pharmaceutical products pursuant to paragraph 3 of Part 10 of Annex A, and also established an intersessional working group to conduct the related activities. POPROC also invited parties and observers to provide to the Secretariat by 5 December 2025 information on the specific exemption pertaining to the use of this chemical for the purpose of producing pharmaceutical products as referred to above. Next on the with regard to agenda item 5D on the review of medium chain chlorinated paraffins pursuant to paragraphs 2 and 12 of Part 13 of Annex A. So just to provide you some context, during the meeting, the Secretariat had explained to the committee that these reviews by the COP are not currently taking place. So with regard to the first review, the review of MCCPs pursuant to paragraph 2 that relates to the 3% threshold, this is actually scheduled to take place at COP 14 in 2029, while the other review, the review of specific exemptions, is expected to take place at COP 15 in 2031. However, this item was included in the agenda of the last POPROC meeting for the reason that the current set of members of the committee had been involved in the review of MCCPs beginning from the consideration of its draft risk profile in POPROC 19 and also the draft risk management evaluation at POPROC 20, and also follow the COP discussions at last May, and therefore are quite familiar with this listing. And so it was suggested that instead of waiting until close to 2029, when most or if not all of the members would have been rotated by then, this was included so that the draft terms of reference for conducting the reviews could already be prepared, noting that they could also be reviewed later on, let's say in POPROC 2020. POPROC 23 in 2027 to further fine-tune them and also tailor them to provide newer information. However, following consideration of the matter, POPROC 21 adopted Decision 4, in which it took note of the draft terms of reference for conducting the review of the concentration limit for MCCPs, and also decided to further consider the draft terms of reference referred to above at the 23rd meeting of the committee scheduled to take place in 2027. Next, on item 5E, on the indicative lists of substances covered by the listings of long-chain perfluorocarboxylic acids, perfluorooctanoic acid, its salts and PFOA-related compounds, and perfluorohexane sulfonic acid, its salts and PFH excess-related compounds. The committee adopted Decision 21/5, in which it took note of the indicative list of substances covered by the listings of these chemicals, invited parties and others to submit to the Secretariat by 31 March 2026 any new information or comments on these indicative lists, and also decided to establish an intersessional working group to further review the indicative lists, taking into account any new information and comments received from parties and others. Okay, sorry, I clicked twice. Next, on item 5F, on the follow-up to the report on persistent organic pollutants in products and articles, and enhancing the submission of information pursuant to Annex F. So just to provide a bit of background, you may recall that in decision SC 12/8, by the Conference of the Parties at its last meeting, it welcomed the committee's report on this matter and decided to continue efforts to improve the identification of POPs in stockpiles, products, and articles in use and in waste, with particular attention to the needs of developing countries for capacity building and technical assistance. So the COP requested the Secretariat to assist the committee in gathering information on POPs in products, to provide guidance to parties on labeling for chemicals listed in Annexes A and B, and to raise awareness on relevant guidance. In this regard, the committee adopted Decision 21/6, in which, among others, it took note of the additional information on the follow-up to the report, and on ways of enhancing the submission of information specified in Annex F to the convention. The committee also invited parties and observers to provide to the Secretariat by 31 March 2026 information relevant to enhancing such submissions relating to the considerations specified in Annex F to the convention, as well as information on the application of notes I and II of Part 1 of Annexes A and B, which relates to unintentional trace contaminants and articles in use, respectively. So further, the committee also decided to establish an intersessional working group to develop a form for the collection of any such other relevant information, to analyze the information submitted, and to prepare a report for consideration by the committee at its 22nd meeting. Finally, the committee also agreed to prepare a draft revised form for the collection of information specified in Annex F, including accompanying guidance and proposed steps for consultation with relevant stakeholders. So you will see on this screen some background information on this form. This was first developed in POPROC 2 and thereafter revised in POPROC 5. You may also recall that during meetings of the COP, there has been a lot of discussion on the use and availability of alternatives to chemicals. And this information is usually not available to the committee during the Annex F stage. And so the need for more comprehensive Annex F submissions from all parties and observers across regions is becoming more apparent. In this regard, the chair of the committee invited POPROC to consider this with a view to improving the collection of Annex F information. So there has been also a growing recognition of gaps in collecting information and data on other matters, such as on the environmentally sound disposal of POPs waste, and also the need to enhance engagement with industry and government so that they can be properly guided on the submission of information relating to Annex F. So all of these developments underscore the need to enhance the collection of data, and this led to this proposal and eventual adoption of the decision by the committee to prepare a draft revised form for the collection of Annex F information. Moving on to the last technical item on the global monitoring plan for newly listed POPs. So in this regard, you may be aware that the Conference of the Parties had adopted the global monitoring plan in 2009 to provide comparable data on POPs in core media in order to evaluate the effectiveness of the convention pursuant to Article 16. And at the 12th meeting of the COP held in May this year, it welcomed updated guidance on the global monitoring plan, which supports effectiveness evaluation under the convention. So under the global monitoring plan, it would need to include newly listed POPs in its framework for monitoring, but it has been experiencing more and more greater challenges since, especially due to the fact that newly listed POPs are becoming more complicated and challenging to analyze, especially due to the fact that there are many related compounds. So this has also been putting a lot of pressure on parties in conducting monitoring exercises. And therefore, based on the recommendation by the Effectiveness Evaluation Committee and also discussions by the Global Coordination Group for the Global Monitoring Plan, it was considered important to involve and engage more the POPs Review Committee experts in considering its approaches for conducting the global monitoring plan in a more effective manner, especially with regard to newly listed POPs. So in this regard, the committee adopted Decision 21/7, in which, among others, it took note of the information provided to it on the global monitoring plan for newly listed POPs. It acknowledged the importance in terms of supporting the committee's work of improved information sharing between the committee and the Global Coordination Group under the Global Monitoring Plan for POPs. And also it requested the Secretariat, drawing on the committee's technical work, to compile for consideration by the committee at its 22nd meeting a set of information to be shared with the Global Coordination Group. So those are that was an overview of the matters, the technical matters taken up by the committee and the related outcomes. On this screen, you will just see an overview of the information requested by the Secretariat to be provided by parties and observers, as contained in its letter dated 5 October 2025. And you will see here also the corresponding deadlines for the submission of such information. On this slide, you will see an overview of the intersessional working groups that were established at the 21st meeting of POPROC. There was a total of 5 intersessional working groups established. And you will also see here their respective mandates. And finally, on other matters, POPROC 21 identified an interim chair for POPROC 22, and this is Ms. Magdalena Friedrich from Poland. And as with the CRC 22 meeting, as Sandria mentioned, we have the same case for the next meeting of POPROC. We had announced the dates for the next meeting to be 5 to 9 October 2026, but this is very, very likely to change. And we are just discussing the schedule with our counterparts at the FAO, and we will be informing you soon of the new dates for the meetings next year in 2026. As for the report, we expect the English version to be issued in late November, and the language versions to be issued early next year. So thank you very much for your attention, and I can open the floor now for questions in case of more technical